There is no more elegant and effective way to improve a language than through the power of a good story. Stay with us and discover how a simple story can transform both your understanding and your perspective. There is a form of paralysis that we all know well. It doesn't affect the body, but the will. It's the feeling of standing before a mountain so vast, whether it's organizing a house, starting a new project, or changing an old habit, that the simple task of choosing the first step becomes, in itself, overwhelming. It is the cruel paradox of ambition. Our desire to achieve a perfect result is so great that the sheer scale of the task condemns us to do absolutely nothing. The pursuit of everything leaves us with empty hands. But what if the solution to the largest of mountains wasn't a Herculean effort, but a whisper? What if an entire life could be reorganized, not in a weekend of exhaustive work, but through the surprising power of a 5-minute alarm? This is the story of Evelyn, a woman whose chaotic world was rebuilt, not by force, but by the consistency of ridiculously small starts. In the heart of Brooklyn lived Evelyn. To her clients, she was an architect of clarity, a talented graphic designer who transformed the chaos of information into beauty and order. Her logos were clean, her layouts impeccable. She was paid to create harmony, but her apartment told a different story. It was the mirror of her mind, a vibrant but chaotic ecosystem, full of stacked books representing unfinished learning projects, half-finished canvases, and a general disorder that silently drained her energy day after day. The trigger for change, as it so often does, arrived in the form of a simple text message. It was from her older sister, Rue, the personification of methodical organization, whose apartment looked like it had come straight out of a minimalist design magazine. The message read, "I'll be in New York in 2 weeks. Can't wait to see your new place." Every word was a brick in the wall of panic that was rising around Evelyn. A deadline had been set. With the clock now ticking, Evelyn stood at the door of her living room and looked at her world. She didn't just see a mess to be cleaned. She saw a web of postponed decisions, abandoned projects, and dusty aspirations. Each room wasn't a task, but a mountain of interconnected subtasks. The feeling was so overwhelming, so monumental, that her brain chose the only escape route it knew: total paralysis. She didn't know where to start, and so she didn't start. The contrast to Evelyn's world lived in the same hallway. Mr. Peterson, the building's elderly and serene janitor, was a master of quiet order. He was the guardian of a complex 8-story building, a universe of lives and problems, and he kept it impeccable, not with bursts of effort, but with a calm, methodical approach. He didn't wage heroic battles against disorder. He simply prevented it from accumulating through a daily symphony of small, constant actions. It was he who found Evelyn that afternoon, standing like a statue at her apartment door, staring at the chaos within with an expression of pure, silent despair. He saw the entire building of problems reflected in her eyes. He didn't offer to help her clean, much less give her a lecture. Approaching slowly, he simply stood beside her and, with a calm voice that seemed polished by decades of patience, said the only thing she needed to hear. "You're looking at the whole building, Miss Evelyn. No one can fix a whole building at once. But anyone," he paused, looking at her with kindness, "anyone can fix a dripping faucet." Evelyn's gaze followed his. From the doorway, Mr. Peterson pointed to a single, overloaded shelf of art books, where volumes were precariously stacked. It was a small piece of the chaos, a single dripping faucet. "Forget the rest," he said softly. "Take that shelf. Just 5 minutes. Set an alarm on your phone. When it goes off, you stop. That's all for this morning. A part of Evelyn wanted to laugh. 5 minutes? What could 5 minutes do against years of accumulated clutter? It felt like advice to put out a fire with an eyedropper. But desperation was a more convincing teacher than logic. With no other ideas in mind, she went inside, grabbed her phone, and with a sigh of disbelief, set the alarm. For 5 minutes, she ignored the rest of the world and focused only on aligning those books. Then, the alarm rang, the sound cut through the silence, and she stopped, as promised. She looked at the shelf. It wasn't perfect, not even completely organized. But it was a small island of order in the middle of an ocean of chaos. A clearing in the dense forest. And it was in that moment that she felt it. Not an overwhelming relief, but a quiet click in her mind. A small, but undeniable sense of victory. The insurmountable obstacle wasn't the work, it was getting started. And she had just proven to herself that starting could be as simple as 5 minutes of absolute focus. The next day didn't begin with despair, but with a silent question: what else can I do in 5 minutes? The island of order called her back. Evelyn chose a drawer of mail, set the alarm, and began. That afternoon, it was a pile of magazines. And then, at night, a section of her wardrobe. The 5-minute rule became her ritual, her secret weapon to break the overwhelming mountain into a handful of manageable stones. Each task was no longer a project. It was just the next alarm. But the real transformation wasn't happening in the apartment. It was happening inside of her. Each alarm that rang was not just the end of a task, but the sound of a small promise kept to herself. With each tiny victory, her sense of control and self-confidence grew. The external order began to generate an internal clarity she hadn't felt in years, as if by arranging the shelves, she was also organizing the thoughts in her mind. When her sister arrived 2 weeks later, she found an apartment that wasn't perfect, but was calm. It was a space that could breathe, a reflection of the creative and focused person Evelyn had always been, but who had been buried under the weight of procrastination. The approval in Rue's eyes was gratifying, but the real reward was something else, deeper and more lasting. It was the certainty that Evelyn now possessed a tool, a master key, not just for organizing her apartment, but for facing any overwhelming task life threw at her. Evelyn's journey through her chaotic apartment teaches us a profound and liberating secret about the nature of change. The secret to climbing the biggest mountains lies not in a single, heroic leap of courage, but in a quiet succession of small, consistent steps. Strength comes not from the intensity of a single day, but from the discipline of starting, again and again, for just 5 minutes. This story invites us to look at our own lives and identify our mountain, that overwhelming project, that habit we want to change, that chaos we've been putting off for so long. If this parable about finding order in chaos and the power of small beginnings resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Like and share the video so this simple rule can find others paralyzed before their own mountains. And, of course, subscribe for more stories that help you learn English. Until next time, start small, but start now.